to another episode of the Critical Podcast. My name is Jimmy Good, and I'm your host, and returning is my go-to podcast compadre, Mr. Joe Lever. Joe, how you doing?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Doing well, sir. How about you?
I'm doing fine. I like this kind of accent you got going on. It's got like an Eastern European, Transylvanian vibe. I like it all around.
Whatever. I was never good at impressions.
That's okay. Well, I was gonna say for the rest of the night, you got to use it. Just be like, "Welcome to the Critical Podcast." And you're like,
Russian or
yeah, we're not. We're trying not to offend anyone, but we offend everybody by doing that. So it's no problem.
And now I gotta know, where is Transylvania in relation to Russia?
West of it, I think.
I know that.
Did it. Geography lessons from Critical Reviews. Joe's going to look this up. He needs to know.
Continue.
He needs to know. Anyway, hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode. And thank you guys for joining us once again. We have a few listeners who are actually listening just audio-wise. So please let us know if, how it sounds on your end. I'm just so curious to know. But thank you for everybody who's tuning in or watching us. And we've had some fun guests over the past couple of weeks. But this week, we're talking about TV. Last week, we talked about movies. And, we're talking Disney last week as well. But this week, we're talking about some television. We're talking about some specific television, though. We're talking about The Boys. The Boys, yes, Amazon Prime's one of their original shows, as it were, based on a graphic novel or comic line. But we're going to talk about Boys Season 1 and 2, because I don't think, Joe, we ever talked about The Boys, like the first season, because I don't think you'd watched it up until recently, and we kind of watched a little bit of it together. And I've seen it, the first season 2 times through, a few of those episodes 3 times through now, and I just watched season 2, just as you did, and everybody else did, kind of doing the interesting Amazon model, which I kind of like, the whole, they release 3, and then they do week to week. I think that's kind of a smart thing. It kind of gives you that first initial hit, and then you're like, okay, I gotta keep checking back in, whereas Netflix is especially with the Marvel stuff, it was here's 12 episodes or 10 episodes and over on Friday, and they're all there, and you're like, oh god, it's a lot, man.
Probably keeps the traffic up nicely.
Oh, for sure. It keeps people around. Anyway, so we're going to talk about The Boys a little more in a general tone at first, but then I will flip the old spoiler switch over here. Hopefully I'll remember to put in the graphic and the audio effects. That's for future Jimmy to worry about. But anyway, basically, if you're not familiar with The Boys, just imagine kind of the basis is that what if Justice League, those characters from DC pretty much were real, and then they were actually kind of almost privatized, and they were owned by a company, this kind of evil organization called Vought, and they basically get to be heroes but only under Vought's purview. And it's what if those people were all really bad, though, on top of it, and the world, it's a really cynical world in which they live in. The superheroes can kind of act a little bit independently insofar as how they deal with crimes that Vought allows them to go out on. They will kill people. In the first episode, first scene, you see Homelander kill a guy, which is basically Superman. He kills a guy and he melts another dude's gun to his hand with his laser vision. So it's a pretty brutal show. And basically, we're kind of seeing that group, which is called the Seven, the Justice League allegory, face off against this other kind of group of misfits that used to be funded by the CIA called the Boys, who are basically these vigilantes who are trying to keep the soups in line. But speaking in generalities, or generality, what's a hard word? Generalities? Anyway, Joe, how do you feel about seasons 1 and 2 about The Boys without getting too spoilery?
How do I feel about it? I like the twist on the superhero complex, and that this is what it would be like in reality, period.
Yeah.
I think it's a flash of reality, very contrasting to the whole Marvel DC formula. Granted, there's all that base historical information to pull upon for all those characters, but it's all too perfect, right? In all reality, if you had these people that were all powerful, yeah, you have supervillains, and the heroes keep them in check and all. But I mean, in all reality, it would just be, what's the word? I don't know. It's just an interesting through line, and that's I just know that, or I feel that Marvel Universe, it just wouldn't be that perfect world situation. These people are uncontrollable, hero or villain. There's always ulterior motives. There's a bunch of outside influences, and then when you enter in the corporate world as an injection into that, it makes it all that much more turbulent, and toxic. So, um, and I really like that, and I like the fact that they enter in the business side of things because there's money to be made.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
um, so yeah, I find that fun. And then even if say Homelander was crystal clean, the best, and they show this in like some of the DC stuff with Superman and being, struggling with emotions and things of that nature when it comes to humanity and how they act and react and all that. Um, but say Homelander starts out as squeaky clean, patriotic stud, right? A few things go wrong that influence him, and next thing you know, he's dreaming about mowing down crowds of civilians with his laser beams, just out of sheer spite, things of that nature. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I enjoy this take on that world.
Yeah, totally. I think you put it really well. I think for a lot of people and for us who are kind of watching this stuff and consuming this stuff all the time, it's very different than like the Marvel stuff you see behind me for sure. And it is a nice change of pace. It can be sometimes I think a little like they're trying to push it too far or too hard, where they're trying to be like, what if this world were real and like how creepy would it really be? And you start to get into like some of like the weird outlier stuff, which isn't really I don't think pertinent to the actual characters, but it's more just like world building. And I think that's kind of the purpose for some of that stuff.
Yeah,
But I think overall, if you enjoy comic book stuff, like movies and TV shows and things like that, you'll enjoy aspects of this for how different it is, if that's something you're looking for. But this is also like this is for a mature audience. This is adults only. Like you can't. Like, it gets pretty violent. And there's a lot of other things in there that like this is not like oh we just watched Endgame as a family. We should go watch The Boys. Don't do that.
no, no.
Don't,
But
don't do it.
and you say maybe sometimes they take it too far. Well, maybe a little bit, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's all very realistic in that, if you're gonna shoot somebody with laser beams, that's what's gonna happen.
Oh yeah, no, I
And
don't mean
things
like
like that.
that. I mean more of like we could get specific about it in a second here, but like
Sure.
certain people in this world who like it's like this person took their job because they took their superpower and their super ability and they basically profit off it in weird ways that don't really come back in any way in the show. It's just to be like, oh, look how weird this world is. And I'm like, what? Okay, we spent
Oh,
like 5 minutes on this person to do that.
I see what
I'm
you
like,
mean,
what?
yeah.
That's weird. Anyway, but Joe, so you'd recommend this show too?
No, I certainly would. If you're of the right mindset and can handle the much more adult side of things
Mm-hmm.
and
Exactly.
mature aspect of it.
Yeah. And I am with him there too. But now I'm going to do what we both really wanted from the beginning. I'm going to flip the old spoiler switch here. And so that way, from now on, we're going to be discussing everything in season 1 and season 2 at our leisure. We might be jumping all over the place. I'm so sorry about that. But hopefully, if you're listening to this, you have already, watched both those things. Here we
Yeah,
go.
flip it.
Why don't I fix that? Why don't I fix that? Anyway, okay.
There
Sorry,
should be
Joe.
an arc flash sticker on there and,
Oh,
and a warning. And
I
where's your
know.
lockout
I'm
tag up
sorry.
procedure?
Well, you know what? Hey, critical reviews. We're running on a budget. You know what I mean? Safety comes after the money comes. So, anyway, okay. I'm gonna say this right up front, and I'm sure a lot of people will be like, "Oh my gosh, really?" But I think season 1, I felt like was super refreshing to me. I enjoyed it, and I liked the arc of most of the characters because I thought it made sense. Season 2, to me, for a lot of the characters, and we'll get a little more specific about it, felt like some of the characters evolved in natural ways, but it also like took the wind out of the sails of like 2 or 3 of the main characters and like gave them like little to no purpose anymore. And I think the one that kind of is the weirdest to me is, let's start with Huey, or Hugh Campbell. So Huey kind of acts as like our allegory to this world. He's just like this kind of regular guy, has just like a job at like a tech store. He lives with his dad, and unfortunately, his girlfriend Robin gets murdered accidentally by A Train, or basically the Flash. And so
Mhm.
Huey's basic like motivation for a lot of this show, for the first season specifically, is to kind of get revenge on A Train. And even in the first season, I'll say it's not perfect because there is a moment where he gets a chance to like kill A Train, and he doesn't, and that's fine because Huey's maybe a nice guy. But I don't know, man. Like he just, I feel like there's not much for him anymore. Like 'cause he's kind of lost that, like that kind of drive. Do you know what I mean? Did you feel that at all?
Yeah, I feel like he becomes eventually a sub character that's just he's a non-essential, but maybe helps to push the storyline here and there.
Sure. Yeah,
That's
and
about it.
they call him like his canary, like, Butcher's canary. Like he's the guy who kind of is like trying to make sure everybody's doing morally correct things.
Sure, reminds Butcher of his
Yeah.
dead brother, that sort of thing.
Yeah, which I find is kind of weird because like Huey also, not that he's as bad as like Butcher and the other boys, but he's not like a squeaky clean guy by any stretch now. Like he, out of all of them, has actually like killed one of the seven, which is a pretty amazing feat. But like I don't know, like it just seems like I don't know why he's like your moral compass. And I also, his relationship with Starlight, who I like Starlight a lot in the first season. The second season, she's so like kind of, she becomes very jaded, I guess. But I just, he frustrates me so much with her because I keep thinking, I'm like, Starlight, I do not know what you see in this dude, especially after the like the betrayal and everything in the first season. I'm
Yeah.
like, why are you still, why I don't know. Like, and there's that moment too in season two, Joe, I don't know if you remember, where she, like, they come back from their little road trip and she's like, all of us are alone, we're always alone, and she kind of like walks away from him. But that, like, it seemed like out of nowhere, but then it didn't really matter. I was like, I felt like she was in a weird spot too, because she was like super naive going in the first season, and then she becomes more like, jaded as time goes by. But
Sure.
I don't know, in this one too, she didn't feel like um as as much of a pinnacle as she was in the first season, right?
I agree. You don't feel like she's as much of a pinnacle as she was in
Or
the
she's
first
not,
season?
yeah, she wasn't as a focal point, I should say. Better
Well,
to put it.
yeah, maybe not a focal point for the whole thing, but she's a major part of it all, and that she's kind of the mole and able to, transfer information and such. And not only that, but she's really their only back pocket superhero besides the mute uh, uh, terrorist from Vietnam or wherever.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Kimiko. Talking about Kimiko.
Kamiko,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, I said, it's not, they're not horrible. I just didn't think they were as compelling as they were in the first season. And I don't know. I guess I kind of got sick of Starlight's mom, like the whole, and like she like kind of made her baby into a super powered individual, and just kind of like a pageant mom, but super powered, just kind of doing it for herself. Which that makes sense. I thought that was fine, but they kind of kept circling back to that in this season, and I was like, I
Maybe a
just,
bit too much where they could just hit it on the head and walked away and moved on or
you know what I
whatever.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, these are the characters I find to be like more, like I should say, less compelling than some of the other ones, because I found the other members of, especially the boys themselves, to be much more interesting. Like Mother's Milk, Frenchie, who gets a little bit more play here in season two, and then obviously the one and only Billy Butcher, who I don't know what it is, Joe, but like something about Carl Urban's performance allows him to not only say the worst words that we've come up almost in all of human society so frequently that it doesn't matter. I just smacked the mic. But like he's charming. Like he's weirdly charming, but then also at the drop of a hat, he can be the scariest guy in the room, because it's like it's all fun and games. Then he'll be like, "I'm gonna kill you," and you're like, "Oh, he means it." Like Billy's,
Yeah.
he's complex, man.
You know, I agree. I started out like, oh, Billy Butcher, he's awesome. This is the greatest character there. A lot of credit owed to him and his character, his performance as a whole, because it is hard to do that. He he is the main focal point in that he's going back for his wife, killing Homelander, killing the Seven, ending Soups, all that, and he has to establish himself in a way that you take him seriously and that you're actually, what's the word, that there's a chance of it, right?
Yeah,
Like he's actually going to get something done.
it's plausible.
And yeah, it's plausible. And so I think the performance as a whole, that character, I think it really comes through and does what it needs to do, what it's meant to do, um, to solidify that thought in your mind that, oh, he could get this done. They're going to find a way. I can't wait to see what happens, right? So they establish that, right, through and through, which is great. Not as much complexity to him as I would have thought. To be honest, I actually started to take a liking more so to Frenchie,
Sure.
um, more than any of the characters, really, and a little bit to Mother's Milk. I mean, it may be in a less bright light than Frenchie, but I kind of like some of his dialogue
Oh
and
yeah,
interactions
he's
with the
he's fun.
group.
Yeah.
Um, I love when they're eating in that little nowhere diner and they're about to get in the car and he's like, oh, you can't use just a wet or what is that, a wet wipe, you're just smearing that around, you need this high end, yeah. Like, and next thing you know, oh yeah, he is like OCD and that sort of thing, which
Yeah.
is cool.
That's Mother's Milk you're
um
talking about, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah. So I started to like him just for those little tidbit moments. um so like I said, not as prominent as like Frenchie, who I think there's like some more complexity there. um Maybe slightly unpredictable, um, but also I think a lot of emotion in that character, so I kind of enjoy it.
Yeah.
Whereas Butcher, it's slightly more straightforward. Eventually they start to pull at emotional strings with him a little bit more towards the later part of season 2 and everything, which is great. But I kind of know what I'm getting there. But like I said, Frenchie, I mean, never really started out as that bright star for me that I kind of started to find myself more, what's the word,
You're gravitating toward him.
gravitating towards.
Mhm.
Um, but that I think shows well how he grew as a character, kind of a thing,
Mhm.
and became um, more of that focal point to me. But yeah, yeah. As far as the boys are concerned, I think that's kind of my take on it, or how I feel about the crew. Like you said, Huey. I mean, eventually, I just get to the point where I'm like I get his role in it, but I kind of get to the point where I'm like, I mean, this guy should just walk away. He's a bit of a doof.
Yeah. A
Like,
bit of a doof. That's well
yeah,
put.
and he's a little bit of a pushover. He's taller than all of them.
Yeah.
Taller than all of them,
Yep,
and
for sure.
he can't stand up for himself in one lick of a way. Just whatever. Like he just gets annoying to me.
Yeah.
Although I understand why he's there, the purpose, and all this and that, but yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think you make a good point about Frenchie, though. He did grow on me, and I think in season 2, when you get more of his backstory, which they teased at in the past, especially with Lamplighter, I was thinking like, oh, that is interesting. And then
exactly.
kind of the twist with Lamplighter, I kind of would have liked to have actually seen that all come, apart as it were, but they didn't. They just kind of alluded to it, and it was fine. I kind of thought Lamplighter. It was, great to see like I forget the name of that actor. I had the cast with me, Joe, but I gave up. Anyway, he played
He played
Iceman.
Jimmy Olsen in Smallville,
Yeah, I forget.
or is that his twin?
I
He
don't
has
know.
a
He's got a
twin
twin.
brother.
It's so confusing. Anyway, so he played Iceman at least in X-Men. So it's like, oh, he's got fire powers now. He's basically Pyro. Uh,
Yeah,
I liked how they. Yeah, I like that they brought him in. I don't always like when they do the whole like we thought this guy was a villain for so long, but actually he was a villain, but he wasn't trying to like murder the kids of the CIA director who was in charge of this type of thing. He was trying to murder her. But then I thought the way that Lamplighter went out was really weird. I was like, why did you do that? Like, I don't know if it was just he was too powerful, and they're like, well, we don't know what to do with him on the show if he continues, because he was in that gray area where he was still kind of working for Vought, but he was working at this kind of institution where they were testing out using Compound V, which gives the superpowers to people, to adults instead of babies. And then if it didn't work out, he just burn them alive. I just thought it was weird that he like went all the way back to the tower, just like light himself on fire. Was that weird to you at all, Joe? Or you're like, I don't really care?
Suicidal moment. I guess he couldn't live with himself after killing the kids, kind of a thing. But I
I
mean, did
guess.
they ever? I mean, he shows that he's pretty guilt ridden over it. But I mean, I
Yeah.
didn't expect it either. Um, which brings up a little tidbit that I've always found interesting. All of them are invulnerable. Like,
Yeah.
try and stab him, and the knife breaks. Right. Even the invisible guy that they ended up killing by putting a thing of C4 up his bum. Like, so how is he burning them alive? There's a lot of little tidbits where I'm like, wait, so like, no matter what, a side effect is they're kind of invulnerable and they're strong.
Yeah. To some degree. And
Never
maybe,
mind the
yeah.
particular power they get.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He wasn't fireproof apparently, which is weird, but I understand what you mean.
Exactly.
And that's why it's
Yeah,
even
the
weirder to me.
pyro isn't
I'm
fireproof.
like, what the like, and that's fine. I get it. Like they had to get rid of him, but I was thinking like I'd rather have if you're gonna do that, might as well have Homelander run his arm through him, or something. You're like, oh, hey, there's Homelander. You know what I mean? He'll be like, hey, welcome back, Lamplighter. Sorry, we don't have a space for you anymore. Like something like that would have been
Yeah.
a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, you're talking about Frenchie, and kind of circling back to just kind of finishing up the talking about the boys as the group. I feel like with the reveal at the end of season 1 and kind of how season 2 shakes out with Billy Butcher's wife, him trying to find her because he was pretty sure Homelander raped her and then maybe killed her. She killed herself. Well, she was actually alive, and she was raising her kind of illegitimate son that she had with Homelander as like a little boy in this like kind of secret facility that was like this little town that was fake.
Yeah.
And I feel like now that that's all resolved, it almost makes Billy like not necessary in the story anymore, which is really sad because he's my favorite. Because like what does he have to fight for anymore? Like it's kind of like why would he do this? He'd be like, I don't like he obviously still hates Homelander. Maybe that's the only thing that would drive him, but from now on, it doesn't seem like he has a purpose. I don't know if you felt that way too.
Not totally. I think his still current distaste uh for supers.
Yeah, soups.
I think still propels him forward a little bit. I think at the end of season 2, probably biggest spoiler of them all if you haven't watched, the whole Nazi injection and things of that
Oh,
nature,
we'll get to it.
yeah, because so he's still hung up on, there's still that to fight for, and the fact that um, Vought is technically a byproduct of originally what would have been a Nazi scientist came to America, and this and that started Vought and all that. Is there still any of that underlying? Because they were kind of going along with that whole thing, and Stormfront being as old as she was, I don't know how that works. How she
Yeah,
was still so young and this and that, um, but yeah, I think there's still something more to be said on that. So it's ended with a to be continued note for sure. Um, so now I think it's more of like his purpose is no longer the revenge trip. Maybe a little bit of that because without any of these soups, none of this would have happened. His wife would still be around. There'd be no illegitimate child, all this and that. And he would just be happy living with his dog and his wife, right? So I think that still holds, maybe not as strongly because she's gone and this and that. But I think there's still more to for him to bite into and chew on, so to speak. So I don't think totally senseless anymore why he would be involved, but I get what you're saying.
yeah. I feel bad because it's like his whole like reason for doing this in the first place is kind of gone. Like he learned how to be like a CIA agent basically and hunt superheroes because of this, and now it's kind of like your purpose is gone. And I do love that moment though, where at the end where he finds out that his wife is dead and he kind of sees the crowbar and sees the kid. And I don't think it was going to work, but I really, really wanted that to happen where he was going to attack the kid, I was like, oh my gosh, what if like Billy
Yeah,
is like he goes and he kills this illegitimate kid? Because he
yeah,
like there's been a few times in the show where in season 2 where he kind of like he does lie right to Becca, his wife's face, and he tries to kind of fix that. But then later on, when he gets that opportunity, and if you would have had another minute or two, I think we could have seen, even if he wouldn't have done anything to that kid, I think it would have been interesting to have that, like, what if Billy went and he just freaking,
yeah.
just,
Well, it probably wouldn't have worked, and he would have created another Homelander. But I don't
yeah.
think in that moment he thought that
No, he
or
didn't
was
care.
thinking that.
Yeah.
He didn't care, and I don't think he's smart enough to think about those repercussions or how you create a Homelander kind of a thing. So,
Not in the moment,
um,
right?
yeah, because I mean, if I was that kid, yeah, and I knew I had any sort of potential to cut people in half with my eyes,
Yeah.
dead,
That's
and
a
I'd probably do more than one slice, you know?
one thing they do in this one, and I think it's a little more apparent, like with him, the son of Homelander, they kind of there's a moment where he shows back up, and Homelander has been out with Stormfront, and they took the kid up, and the kid's like, "Oh, Mama, you like Homelander showed me that like all this is fake and all this." The show does a really good job of trying to cut around with the budget that they have because the game or the show is
That's true.
shot really well and they do a few superhero moments, but there's just like a lot of talking that's very interesting, but they don't show you a lot of the things they're talking about, like the lamplighter thing I said before. Like in a movie, they'd probably
True.
cut back to that like moment and
Yeah,
lamplighter
him
like
burning the kids and all
right,
that.
yeah, yeah. So here it's like they cut around it, but I thought in this one, especially when the kid was like, he showed me everything, I was like, oh, that would have been interesting to see, like the kid freaking out about that, but they were just like, yeah, it's not necessary.
Yeah, they
So
show it off slightly, but in more or they show it off slightly, but in less detail or overview. You know, you kind of get the idea of the gates and the walls and this and that from when Billy gets in there and that sort of thing.
yeah,
That's about it. Um, so working with the budget they have, I think, is nicely done in this show, especially with special effects and stuff. I mean, there's money going towards that, and they have some good special effects too, and they pull them out when necessary. And obviously, they have to with superpowers and such. But yeah, I think well done for the show in that regard.
it's also very sparing, just for people who are like going to watch this, to, like watch a bunch of superheroes fight each other. That doesn't happen very often, and they don't use a lot of their powers. There's a lot of like Homelander flies above you really quick, and you're like,
Yeah,
oh, is that? Or he'll land, and you're like, and that's kind of it. Like you
I
don't
think in a
show
lot
that
of
as much.
aspects, it's similar to like if you've ever watched like Smallville or something like that, where Smallville, a lot of what they did for Clark's powers is done in a lot of practicality. Um,
Sure.
so there's a bit of that, but less corny and a little bit better, more well done. But yeah,
There's way more fight scenes in Smallville, though. I'll say that. There's a ton of like every episode, like most all
oh,
episodes had like a fight scene in it, which
sure, yeah, villain of the week kind of thing. But
yeah,
one thing you talked about, so Homelander and Becca Butcher's once wife or still wife. I thought that she cheated on him.
I thought at first that was it, but I
Yeah,
guess not.
they do a horrible job of insinuating that she was raped by him because it looked like they went into a room together, did it for 3 hours, and she came out putting her heels on.
Yeah,
But
and it's
apparently, our buddy Drew, he's big into it, and he said, "No, dude, if you watch, she comes out and she's all like kind of crying, distraught." And I didn't catch it. Maybe it was just too quick of a cut through, but I never caught that. I thought she cheated on him, and Billy was going to find that out and see what happened then. But that wasn't the case.
yeah, that was something that always bothered me because I wasn't sure going into season 2, like leading into it, if that was going to be the case or not. I think it seems weird because like that's the thing that pulls Billy into this whole situation. I don't get why like Homelander chose her because we don't really get this feeling that Homelander has like this desire for other people in that way besides Madison Stillwell. So
Yeah,
it seems like
Homelander has a mother. What do they call
yeah,
that? A mother
he's got an Oedipal
complex.
complex or an Oedipus
Yeah,
complex.
yeah, big time.
And yeah, I do want to talk about her, but I agree with you, Joe. I was kind of weird. It was weird, and it was kind of strange. It was like a 3 hour thing. Like I don't know. There's some things in there I was like, I just don't. It seems a little far fetched, and it would have made more sense. You're right. If she would have said like, yeah, I actually like am really crazy about Homelander, which wouldn't have made it any easier on us because like you want to be sympathetic towards Becca. You don't want to be like, oh well, forget her, Billy. Like get out of here. So which it was kind of strange. I think they probably could have done that in a better way, like if Homelander would have inadvertently killed her or something, because it seems like the kid isn't a thing anymore. Like the kid's just off the grid now, so that doesn't really matter. I'm like, I don't know. It just seems like there could have been something more compelling. But I do want to talk about Stillwell, because I think I think she's such a good villain, because she's like the kind of the leader of Vought more or less right now, because or in the first season, because she kind of has the ear of all the soups, especially Homelander, and she is very PR. Like she's always just like, well, we think we're going to take it in this direction and stuff, and she'll only break down when she's alone. But you could tell sometimes she's trying to juggle all of this, like the press. She's trying to juggle like having all the superheroes, doing stupid things when they're not supposed to, and then also trying to kind of imprint herself on a new Homelander or a new baby that she's carrying around. That she's kind of like, you could tell she's not really into. Like she's just kind of using it, and Homelander gets really frustrated. Like it's funny to watch like Superman basically get angry that like a baby is getting attention, he's not.
Yeah,
But that, I think she's so interesting because she has no powers, but she's so compelling to so many. And that's like her power, like that
sure.
she's just like the head honcho, and she knows like about pretty much everything that goes on in Vought. Like she knows all the
Yeah,
bad stuff.
which was like, how does assistant lady get promoted or brought back in, hired back on to fill her
Yeah, okay,
shoes? Yeah, right.
so Ashley, as we were talking about here, that
Yeah.
was so frustrating, because when she gets like fired in season 1, I was like, okay, and she's purposefully annoying, and this is not, I never try, it's not like marks against the actors or actresses who do this stuff. Like, she's like supposed to be annoying, she's supposed to be nice when she wants to be nice, but then also really mean. But then she gets brought back in as, yeah, Stillwell's job basically. And I don't know if Stillwell's even at the very top of that food chain. It seems like there's like another kind of group that
Nope.
does it.
The
But
board and
yeah,
well, there's like the
yeah,
CEO, but a
yeah,
board over top of it. So
yeah. But yeah, I thought it was weird to bring her back into. I don't know if she was just like part of the cast, and they're like, all right, we'll bring her back in to kind of do that job. But she doesn't really have that job. Homelander basically is like taken that job on himself, and he's like, you're just going to kind of act as my person. And he's like, if you have any problems with that, I'm going to kill you, like I killed Stillwell. Because when he killed her, I think a lot of people thought at the end of season 1, I did too. I was like, oh, so Homelander's unleashed. Like it's Superman. He's crazy, and there's
I
no
thought
one in the
so
world
too.
who's gonna like stop him. And I was like, oh, cool. He's gonna go on like a rampage. Like if anybody says anything at a press event, he's like, oh, cool, and he'll just kill him. But unfortunately, not the case, because Stillwell gets out, and then Stormfront comes in, and that's where you're kind of alluding to earlier. And I'll be honest, Joe, I did not really like. I get it, but I don't really like the whole like it's the main enemies are Nazis again. Like it seemed like it was so out of nowhere, and I get it. The show is political, and I'm not saying that they aren't a good villain, because they totally are. It just felt even more far fetched. I was like, okay, and like you were
Well,
saying, she doesn't age, and she's been like around for decades, and where was she for a while, and she was another superhero for a while, and I was
well,
like,
so she was married to the original something Vought, whatever his name was, but he was he originally created the compound V and kind of perfected it on her, and she got some sort of special doses and that whatever. But I like how they set it up as the Nazi influence, and it was all plausible. I actually didn't find it as far fetched as I think it could have been.
okay,
The way that they injected that, it made sense, right? Nazi origination, or at one time there's a Nazi sympathizer who started this whole thing, and there we go. They set up their foundation right in New York. Okay. Um, and you mentioned that this show's very political. I'm not going to weigh in as to how it is and why and what through lines you can draw.
sure,
I'll let you draw those on your own, listeners. But
mm-hmm.
they're there. I think there's a lot of this show, surprisingly, that they try to correlate to current events. Maybe not totally uh, profoundly or in your face, but if you're keen enough to watch for it, you pick up on it from time to time. So um, yeah, it's interesting, but yeah. So I don't know if the Nazi thing. like I said, I think with Vought still standing strong, the whole Nazi thing maybe isn't quite dead, although Stormfront dies at the end.
Yeah, maybe not fully dead. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And the only reason, like I said before, you make a good point. Maybe they'll flesh it out more in season 3. It just feels like this world and Vought have not been around super long, and that's kind of the point, right? But superheroes are established, and I was just like, you're pulling on a villain or a villainous group from so long ago, and like only now is somebody comes out of the woodwork, the Stormfront, who played another hero for a while, and now we're finding out like her ties to the Nazi party. I'm like, it felt like so like out of left field for me, and I was like, oh, like, with Indiana Jones, I'm always like, yeah, it's the Nazis, I get it. That's kind of like his, like, he's like, oh man, I keep running into these guys. But then it's like, oh, you know even today I was like, oh, just make Vought. I thought the villain was just going to be like corporate America in general, like that was the kind of like, that's the villainous group. um but yeah, I don't know, I was kind of like, really? Okay, I guess we're doing the
Yeah.
Nazi thing. But it did make a lot more sense that I thought she would be a lot nicer to Homelander, and she does eventually get to that point. But like, Homelander is like the greatest dream of like that, like the Third Reich. They're like his look, his powers, like what he stands for, kind
Well,
of like,
exactly,
yeah,
and she starts to play him to her advantage or the agenda's advantage, and he doesn't even realize it. I mean, you watch some of the, when they're up on the podium, like, then they won't let us in the military,
yeah,
but they need us, and this and that. I mean, it's very clear the agenda of trying to turn the people against the government to get them on their side to push them into the military, and the next thing you know, they have um, the entire military behind them as well. And then next thing you know, they have control over everything because who's going to really stop them? Not the military, not anyone. So now they have control of all of it and can destroy it from the inside or use it from the inside. So, um, yeah, that's where there's the politics being played, but it's there's a bit of fear mongering kind of a thing, or playing people against the government or others, groups and factions, that sort of stuff. It's interesting. They also delve into the whole social media influence
yeah,
and how media treats things a little bit, maybe not as much, but um, yeah, yeah, and it also kinda delves into uh, how gullible the mass population can really be through stupid influences.
sure,
You know what I mean? Um, which, maybe overplayed in this versus reality, but you get the idea, and, I'm sure a lot of people, can, uh, can garner that from watching, but, yeah. Yeah, it didn't have to be the Nazis. It could have been something totally different or a different faction or
sure.
group, but uh, you know, eh, very profound, I guess, being the Nazis. So
Yeah, it just, like I said, it just like, I was like, what, really? I was like, that's what I was like, we're doing this, and that's, again, it's fine, it's totally fine. You make your own mythos and all that stuff. I just like the idea of the villains just being internal, which I think that's why the first season is so much more compelling to me. Like, I don't think there was a scene that I've seen so far in any of it besides season 1 with the plane crash sequence that's as compelling as that one. And I love like the kind of like Homelander, like starting off as just like kind of showing up to help this plane that's been taken over by terrorists, and he's just like, oh, I'm here to help everybody, and then he's like, well, sorry, I screwed up and I kind of ruined the plane's controls. And Queen Maeve, like the Wonder Woman, she's just like, we gotta save some of them, and he's like, I don't know what to tell you. He's like, I can't fly out, and I'll crush the plane if I do that, and all that stuff, and the PR look of it all. I like that he turns like that quickly from being like this hero, this angel, to just like, I will kill everybody on this plane if you don't back up. Like, he's like,
yeah,
I'll do it myself.
yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
I mean, like I love the whole aspect of the whole trope. Like Superman would just fly and lift the plane and bring it down to safety. Well, I think that gets brought up at some point. Just fly outside and
yep,
carry the plane. And he's like, "What do you want me to lift it with? The air?"
yeah,
Like, there's nothing to lift against. And I was like, "Okay." Um, then yeah, I just found that interesting. I mean, yeah, physics. Okay, you may be strong as anything anywhere, but you have to have something to push against. Like if I'm on the ground, my legs and everything, I'm pushing against. I have
Yeah.
something to resist me. But
Hmm.
in the air, it doesn't work that way, right?
That's just how good
Uh,
Superman is compared to Homelander's. And Superman also has that ability to, like, if he picks up a building, he can, like, put a force field basically around it, like an invisible one, so it doesn't fall apart. Like, that's another one of his powers that people don't talk about a lot. So that's why when you see him in Justice League, like, carrying a whole apartment building, that's one of his weird powers that, like I said, it's kind of offshoot. Anyway, I just like the sequence, and I like how later on he spins it because he starts making PR plays that Stillwell doesn't get. And he's like standing there looking at the wreckage. And he's like, if we would have been called for this, if we would have been in the military, we might have been able to get there and save these people. Like, and that's like they start just like
uh,
trying to like push forward with that agenda. And then he takes it even further when he goes to that like religious gathering thing, and he's like yelling to people out there like they deserve to be in the military, and he's like flying around like he's God or something. It's like,
I love the baptism
uh,
thing. I'm like, what
oh
the
man,
heck?
that is it.
Oh,
Like holds Huey a little too long under the water, and you're like, this is really freaky.
yeah, right.
Yeah, and that whole Huey sequence trying to get that pastor reverend to like come forward, and just some of the lines Huey says to blackmail him are so rough, dude. It's so bad.
It's
Um
fun.
anyway, I really appreciate out of some of the main villains, I think that Homelander is just so compelling. He's so interesting because you take that kind of Superman hero and turn it on its head, and kind of like say, what if he was raised in a lab, and what if he had these kind of mommy issues, and what if he was unleashed? And there's that one moment which, Joe, I'm sure you loved, and I loved it, even though I was like, oh, is this not happening? Where in season 2 he starts lasering down the entire crowd of protesters, and I was like, I want that to be like maybe in the series finale. Like that's how the beginning episode starts, where Homelander's like, you know what? Forget it, and he just starts killing everybody. He's like, you know what? No, I'm done. I'm done. I've been too nice to you people for too long, and you know what? And he just breaks. Because it looked like at the end of this one, he's like talking to the cameras, and his eyes are like dead. Like he's like, yep, I'm just going through the motions, and I don't even know
Which
anymore.
brings me to the account of what's in it for them.
Yeah, exactly.
The money, I guess, although they never show the plunders of what they
They
do,
have some nice
they're always
apartments.
in their suit. They
Yeah,
never wear normal clothes. They're always in their suit, even when they're at their place, except for Starlight. She changes in the street clothes often.
yeah.
Um,
That's her alter. Which, by the way, I gotta stop it there. I hate that her alter ego is like barely any change to her. She's one of the most famous people on the planet. People would figure it out. They would see her and they'd be like, "I'm pretty sure that's Starlight."
yeah,
You
I
know what
mean,
I
it's the
mean?
same thing with Clark Kent and
She
Superman.
needs glasses. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
But anywho, I just I don't get what's in it for them. They never show them like, oh yeah, you know what I do with my money, or when my stocks are high, I cash some in and I go do this, or
Yes.
I like driving my Rolls Royce, or
Yeah.
like there's none of that. It's just I'm me, I'm the super person, and I like to be liked.
Yes. That's I. You make a great point. And there's like
So what's their
like
incentive?
A Train's like, I've got Prince's guitar or something. I'm like, yeah, but like, okay, like, and I think maybe that's a part of the budget thing too. Like, maybe they all have separate mansions because we only see like one apartment, but I'm pretty sure it's the same apartment that they just reutilize, like in the second
Well,
season.
yeah, but they all have their own quarters or apartment within the 7 Vought tower.
Yeah,
That's where that is on that floor or whatever, and it's like, okay,
yeah,
you know?
I agree with
So,
you. Joe, you make a great point. You're totally right because they talk like even in the first season, they're like, yeah, like my lawyers got me like 5%, and like, your lawyers got you 5%, and like, yeah, I got better lawyers than you. I'm like, well, what does that even mean? Like, there's not a lot of superheroing going on, and there's also not a lot of like them spending the money that apparently they've got so
yeah,
much of. So I
yeah.
totally hear you. I'm
So
with
if
you.
that's the incentive, then back it up. Why do they care so much, or why don't they just like, you know, screw it, I'm out. I can have whatever I want anyway, or do whatever I want anyway. I'm kind of limitless. I don't get it.
Yeah,
Or take my ball and go home.
I think it eventually like the linchpin becomes Homelander because they do tackle it. Just it's very subtle, but in I think season 2, you get Stormfront telling him, it's like, why are you doing this? Like, we don't care about the accolades of all these people. And like in his mind, Homelander starts to like hear the chanting of like people going like Homelander, Homeland, and like that is something that he wants because he
Oh,
didn't
he
have
loves
parents.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and he loves that. That's what gets him. And so then he starts threatening basically everybody else in the 7. He's like, hey, you're either like A-Train, you're out, or like Maeve, you get to stay around. And you're gonna stay around because if you don't, like, I would hate for anything bad to happen to your girlfriend. Which I think they make Maeve a bit more interesting in season 2 because season 1 she's just
For
so
sure.
mopey and cynical, but in this one I feel bad for her because they're putting her on display and they're like, well, look at how like inclusive the Seven are. Like we've always been like this. We're so proud and stuff. And it's just like a marketing campaign. And like her girlfriend is like, I am like, I don't want to do this. And Maeve's like, we got to do this. Otherwise, he's going to kill us. Like Homelander will kill us. Like I think that's interesting until they get a little dirt on him eventually. Which it feels like this show is all leading up to everyone trying to kill Homelander together. Is that how it feels like to you? Maybe, maybe not.
Wait, trying to kill Homelander together.
Yeah, like everybody. Like you get Billy, you get Maeve, you
Oh
get
yeah,
like
next thing you know,
everybody.
he's made so many enemies that multiple people or groups are turning against him. You got the boys themselves, and you got Maeve, Starlight, who kind of becomes part of the boys, whatever you want to say. But to a certain degree, I don't think anybody likes him. I think eventually A Train isn't really on that train anymore. He's
No.
kind of. I think you could turn him in a quick minute.
Is that in season 1 where he says to him, he like welcomes him back, or something happens, or maybe it's season 2, he hugs him and he's like, I'll always be watching over you. And like A Train's like they're hugging, and A Train's like, okay.
Yeah, I think season one because he's what was he?
I know he's out for some reason. There was something that happened, right, where he like was gone and
Yeah.
then came back in.
Oh, and well, I think he was taking the compound V, and
Sure.
nobody really knew that. And
Yeah, he's like, you got to clean yourself up, clean your act up. Yeah, because Compound V like makes you, if you're a soup, makes you even stronger or whatever. Uh,
yeah, it's like a
yeah,
little jolt of more steroids or something, but too much of it can f you up, as you see with A Train. He's the example of that.
yeah. What did you think of like A Train and the Deep? Because they kind of group up, especially in season 2, under the Church of the Collective, which I don't know. Like,
The Church of the Collective is weird. I don't understand its purpose in the whole thing. Obviously, that's where all the dirt comes that releases the info on Stormfront and all that, but I don't get them.
yeah, I don't know either. I think it might be some sort of kind of allegory to like I think it's supposed to be like Scientology or something like that. Like it's supposed to be kind of a
Maybe.
joke about Scientology.
Uh,
I thought
Perhaps.
I thought for sure the main guy who was from ER back in the day, he's a great actor, like that main guy
At
who's
first, he looked a little bit like Hugh Jackman.
yeah, I was like Hugh Jackman. No, he's giving everybody Fresca, and I was like, maybe that is
What's
like
the Fresca joke? I don't get it.
okay. Apparently, it's either like you only like Fresca if you're in a cult. I thought he was like brainwashing people, or maybe that was his superpower. Was like if he got people to drink the Fresca, that like they would obey him no matter what. Like I thought that was the reason because he kept trying to be like, here's Fresca, here's Fresca, here's Fresca. But I have no idea. It seems strange to me. But also like the Deep has like ever since even the beginning of the show, he's just a joke. Like he's
Well, at
this
the
like
beginning, I mean, he's built up like initially, it's like, oh, he's one of the seven. He's a big deal.
yeah,
But then eventually you start to learn, yeah, he's a joke. And especially when he gets outcast to Akron, was it Akron, Ohio?
Sandusky.
Sandusky, Ohio,
Yeah,
which I don't know how that relates to the church, but he ends up there and it's like, yeah. And then you really think about it, his powers are like, I mean, like in DC, you understand how Aquaman could have an impact or is good for the team. With him, it's just like, okay, either you're by water or he's useless or he's just another guy to throw a punch, which in all reality, you don't need.
yeah.
But I love the thing. He's got gills.
Oh, I think that's so
They're
gross.
kind of gross.
It's like Patton Oswalt is like the voice of his gills. And
Oh yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's I get
And
it. Like yeah, and there's like a whole flip around where like a lady assaults him physically because of the gills, and I don't know. He's got some of the weirdest like. It makes the show seem less serious scenes. Like there's supposed to be like the levity stuff, but like with the dolphin and then the whale and like all this
dude,
stuff.
the whale part, I was
It's
like, oh, not to mention, hold on. How do those sharks and that whale swim so fast?
I just think
Come on.
all the stuff with him, it doesn't matter what it is. Maybe some sharks move. I don't know. Anyway, so his
Yeah.
stuff is like the most obscure. It feels like it's like a cartoon. Like the things that happen to the deep, and like his stuff seems like almost a whole different show sometimes because he does stuff. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Like he's like with a dolphin in the back of a van, and the dolphin's talking to him, and I'm like, it just feels very
I
like
think it's like the comedic
obscure.
relief a little bit for sure.
Sure, yeah. But I just don't really care. Like whatever happens with the character, I don't want like he's not someone I want to see redeemed because of like his start and like who he is. He's still a bad guy. Like I don't really need to see him redeemed. And A Train also like is not like after what he did to his kind of like B tier, C tier list girlfriend Popclaw, who kind of
Yeah.
comes and goes. You feel kind of bad for her, but
Claw.
Popclaw, yeah, it's I don't know, it's weird.
Comedic in her own right.
Yeah, is that like a joke? Is that like something? Do I not pick up on something there?
No, just what a stupid name.
Yeah, and she has the weird like her like bones come out of her wrist power. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as those guys go, I think the one of the more interesting ones to me is Black Noir, and I think they might take him in a different direction than they did in the comics, from what I've heard. But I thought he was very funny at first. He has a few moments, and then he's just like the Batman allegory, but he just doesn't talk, and you can't see him at all. But yeah, he's an interesting character, and I'm curious to see if he'll come into play as being a problem for the boys or Homelander, because like they kind of fight him in this one, but you don't get to see any of it really. Like it kind of like the explosions happen, but he's totally fine.
I
I
love that moment when he's in the house and he keeps hitting the booby trap, so it's not a big deal. It just blows up and he starts walking again. You hear him walking above.
sure.
It's kind of cool. It's intense.
I guess yeah, they just don't show it. I want to see some of that stuff, Joe. I want to see him get blown up. You know what I
Well, and I
mean?
want to know, is he like dead under there? Like, there's a point where you see his suit gets ripped up when he's like invading that camp of insurgents or whatever.
Yeah,
Um, and he's
like burned or
Yeah, was
something.
that just a side effect of the guy
Maybe.
blowing up, that super villain, as they wanna call
Do you
him?
wanna do you wanna get a possible spoiler, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from the comics. Apparently, in the comics, I could be wrong about this. If someone's listening to this, please correct me if I'm wrong. Uh, apparently, Black Noir in the past has been a clone of Homelander, like a botched clone of Homelander. And that's one of the reasons that Homelander is so nice to him, because he's afraid of him. I don't know if they will go that route, because apparently some people know the actor who plays him and it's not the same guy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they couldn't do that. I think that'd be an interesting twist to be like, oh yeah, the one guy who doesn't talk at all is like this messed up version of Homelander that is just on the team. But yeah, I don't know what they're gonna do with him. That's another point that I'm
I
like,
mean, you gotta love the mysterious nature of him and everything, and I love when he's crouched over the peak of that roof and
like a creep. Uh,
yeah, yeah, but he's ominous.
yeah.
I, uh I love when he sits down and looks at the piano player.
Yes,
It's
dude.
just like, okay, yeah, and he just picks up and he's just like beautifully playing.
Hmm.
Or when the computer IT girl is at the computer and she's eating what almond joys, and
Oh, is
and
it
he holds the
really?
trash can up.
Oh, I never picked up on that before. Now that we
Yeah,
know that he's
and
allergic,
that's yeah,
dude.
he's allergic. He has a nut allergy, and that's what Maeve does to kind of apprehend him, kind of a thing. And I thought it was cool. Um, but I like that mute interaction, but it's like so impactful. I think
Yeah.
it's great. Um,
Yeah, she'll say
yeah,
like the IT lady's like, "Yeah, I'll look that up later," and he just kind of stands there. She's like, "I will look it up now." Like, just like,
yeah,
and he
exactly. I
just like
like
pulls up a chair and he kind of gets real close. And he's kind of like,
yeah,
he's like, "Please," yeah.
yeah,
He's like, "Come
yeah,
on, come
yeah,
on." Yeah, I think that stuff I think is better comedic relief, because it kind of for me it plays better in the universe. It's not like so obscure or like kind of takes me out. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's a weirdo and everybody's kind of afraid of him, even though he's like this kind of heralded superhero. He's got these movies and stuff, but no one really knows anything about him.
yeah,
He's just a
yeah.
weirdo. Um, yeah,
But so,
man.
what do you think about the whole picture? Like how Vought controls these superheroes, but ultimately they don't really have control over them. It's not like they take their powers away or can do anything to stop them. You're always wondering until uh I forget her name, but Homelander kills her, burns
Oh,
through her
Stillwell.
face. Yeah, Stillwell. I mean, they think that there's some like magic bullet that they have that controls these people or that they hold over their head, but ultimately there's nothing.
Yeah.
It's literally just the relationship, and if they ever want to decide that, hey, F you, Vought, we're going off on our own. We're in the military now, and I've started my own uh, dictatorship.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, they can do it. So I don't really understand how Vought thinks they can maintain control, which kind of goes back to the whole what's in it for them,
Yeah.
the superheroes. They've got money already. They need more. Homelander wants the approval of everybody and wants everybody to love him and that bask in the ray of sunshine, so to speak, kind of thing. But I don't know. Yeah, and to his fault, that plays into the hand of the whole Nazi
Yeah.
ideal thing, and he gets used as a pawn without even realizing it because he's actually kind of a dumb oaf, like
Hmm.
dumb as shit, and he just goes along with it because it's helping him get that ray of sunshine. Although he's pushing the public towards this, supporting something that's horrible.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Not that
Which
he would care anyway.
Yeah, that's a good question. Reminds me, quick, just a brief little tangent. I love that Giancarlo Esposito, like the guy he's part of the board, and and he's kind of running things. I like when he
Oh
meets
yeah,
up. One of my favorite scenes, I think, of the entire season 2 is when he meets up with Billy Butcher, and Billy's kind of like, "Hey, that information got outed about Stormfront, like." And that she's a Nazi, or basically, and he like has a moment of like true honesty where he's like, "Oh no, I hate her." He's like, he's like, if I didn't have to deal with these people, I wouldn't but it's kind
yeah.
of like he's the company man. And he's like, he's like, it sucks, but you know what?
I There were parts of that conversation. There was a part where I actually rewound, like played it back because I could not pick up on what he said
mm,
in his conversation with him. Uh, uh, Billy says something, what is his name or even his character name? I forget.
oh,
Edgar,
I'll look it up. I will look it up while you're
Edgar
talking about him.
something. And Billy says something about his wife and then about getting the kid, and Edgar says to him, uh, diabolical, or I suppose that would, uh, what's a word? What's the word he uses? Damn it. Something like sinister, or that's what separates you and I, or
Oh,
something,
they
or
both talk about being savage or something. There's something where they're
yeah,
both like, "Oh, that's a crazy
yeah.
thing for you to say." He's like, "Yeah, look who's talking."
I didn't get that whole exchange there. I got most of it, but there was a part there where I
Oh,
didn't understand. Yeah,
I love it. Yeah, I thought it was cool. But yeah, but you bring up a good point about them like that. I think that scene is something you go back and kind of watch again because there's maybe more going on there because it's
the
like scene two.
transaction I didn't quite get.
The transaction pretty much it seemed like at that time was Billy was approaching him saying like, "Hey, we kind of have a vested interest in getting rid of this. We want to make sure that this wife of mine and the kid get away because that was the magic bullet that Vought had for a while on Homelander. It was kind of
Yeah,
like we
they
got
wanted
this.
to retain his kid and hold
Yeah.
him kinda hostage, so
Yep.
to speak, as, "Hey,
Hmm.
we got your kid, do as we say." Um, but Billy wants to take the wife away from the kid, and I think that's what Edgar says is, do I have the name right?
Yeah,
Edgar?
Stan Edgar. Very good.
Yeah, I think that's where he says, "Oh, that's savage," or that's yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was his point. Was Billy was kind of saying he's like I'm kind of in this for myself here, and I want to get my wife back, and that's kind of my main goal here. And I don't. She thinks that I'm going to help her, but
Yeah,
I'm kind
and
of
then
still
what
doing
what
it.
happens when she comes groveling at my feet asking for her child, and he
Yeah,
said, and Billy says something, I miss that, and then he says he's savage. I miss that little exchange or
whatever it
whatever
was.
Billy said.
Sure.
It was something that was poorly done, and you couldn't hear it.
Okay.
Period.
I like that he brings that up though, where he kind of says like, "What happens? years down the line where she comes freaking out to me. I like that he had the forethought with that, because many times in these types of things you're like, yeah, why wouldn't you think about like, oh gosh, this is going to come back to bite me, isn't it? But Butcher was just kind of like, that's not going to be a problem. Like he's,
Exactly.
he's
Yeah.
like he's like, it's not going to be a problem, because I think Billy was like really considering how to kill that kid. And in the last season, or last episode of season 2, the beginning is like they're talking about how to kill all of the superheroes on the Seven, and that's kind of like the marketing they use for it. And I was like, oh, I'd be so sad if you like went into this episode thinking like, sick, we're gonna go watch him kill all the supes, because like with Translucent, that's kind of the feeling, like the vibe is the show is going to be that way. It's going to be like superhero hunting. It's not, like, it's not really that way. I'm sorry for people who are like, oh cool, superhero hunting. It's not like Steelheart or anything like
Which,
that.
by the way, did you like how all powerful Stormfront seemed? And then all of a sudden at the end, when Starlight and Queen Maeve get a hold of her, they're just like curb stomping her in the driveway. Like it's
Okay.
like, okay. And then they let her get away. They don't just outright just snap her neck and be done with it.
So there's a joke, and I was reading this about some of the producers and the director, the creative mind behind it. So they saw Avengers Endgame and they thought that that particular scene, and one way or another, I'm wearing a Marvel shirt, so you guys know I love Marvel, but that particular scene in Endgame where all the female superheroes join up together and fight for a second, they found that, for the creative minds behind the boys, found that to be very pandering and frustrating. So when they made their Justice League type movie in season 2, they showed like all the girls standing together and it was like, girls get it done. And then at the end there, Frenchie, I think, says girls get it done. But they did that as supposed to be like a we see what you're doing, like, don't be stupid, don't be pandering. I don't know. I thought either way it was kind of interesting. Like, the thing that frustrated me the most, and I think people were talking about this, is Frenchie in that moment when Stormfront shows up. They have this like RPG or EMP thing ready for her, and he's like, "I'm gonna go get the rocket in the car," and it's like he starts running to him like, "Frenchie, why would you yell that out?" I was like, "Why?" Like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're like, you've been doing this. This isn't your first day. I could see Huey doing that. I could see Huey being like, "I'll go grab the rocket" or whatever, and it's like
Yeah.
Huey, come on. But yeah, no, I thought it was interesting because Stormfront was incredibly powerful. She seems like she fly as fast as Homelander. She had like Storm's lightning powers. Seemed very strong. Could take like a laser to the chest, like from Homelander for a while, which is pretty
Yeah.
impressive. Yeah, I don't know. I think Maeve is really strong, and they don't show her enough. And Kimiko, I was like, oh yeah, she's got the regeneration factor. So when she like died, I was like, she's fine. Like she
Yeah,
got up, it's
exactly.
like,
She can't die, which is interesting. She's
yeah,
strong, but she's not like Homelander strong. Yeah.
they're all
Um,
strong. Like even Black Noir, like they all are like super
yeah,
strong to some degree.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. Starlight, I feel like Starlight powers, her powers, they kind of showed off a little bit more. I didn't realize in the first season that it was based on having electricity nearby. She basically sucks up the energy and she can kind of shoot it out. And I was like, oh, that was kind of interesting that she couldn't use her powers for a while. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like she had limitations, but yeah, they kind of beat her up, and then um, Homefront or Homelander's kid just like lasers her somehow, but still Becca died because she got like choked too much or bled or
No, she
something.
got shot by the kid. The kid had bad aim, and when he, slayed Stormfront, he uh, haphazardly accidentally hit her,
I
and
guess you think if she would be more messy then.
no, he like nicked her. What did she have her throat cut? And it was from his laser
Okay.
catching her.
Okay.
Because yeah, Stormfront was choking her. Like I like to see the light go out, and because they were so close, the kid goes nuts and goes shing and kills her, but inadvertently nicks the mom. And so now, and you could tell the kid's distraught. He knew,
Yeah.
and so the kid killed his mom, also killed the bad person. But now Billy's got the kid. The kid doesn't necessarily like Homelander and is very confused and all this and that. And now Billy hands the kid off to the CIA, who now you have another kid with Homelander powers that's going to be raised in a white room. And last promise to Becca was that he'll be there for him, or don't let him grow up without a parent or whatever, something of that nature. And it's
Sure.
like, so he didn't really keep that promise per se yet that we know of.
Yeah, he might come back and do it or something.
Yeah, maybe when it's all over, if it ever ends. But yeah,
Which reminds me of right before that, because you get like a scene where Homelander kills all those SWAT team members or those
Yeah.
bot members, which I wish we could have seen, but I get they did that in the first
Well,
season
yeah,
with
and
like
which
the
leaves it really
military.
open ended that now Homelander is like, okay, so Vough's against me now. Clearly,
Yeah.
my own company. I know there's some. Yeah.
I love so much when he's sitting with his kid at the cabin and they get all those little like Bluetooth speakers and they have them going off. And so Homelander goes out to check it out and he like lasers through them and he just like looks around. And I'm going to paraphrase here. He says, "What the heck?" But he says it in such a great way to be like, he's like, "What?" Like, he does it and it's such a good bit of acting where like somebody like Superman would be like, "Well, who took like 20 or 30 of these Bluetooth speakers and like put them out in the forest, like cranked them up really loud." He's just, I don't know. It's just, I laughed so hard at that. I was like, this is so good. I think,
Yeah.
I think that actor's name, who I definitely know, it's like Anthony Starr or Anthony Starr. I think it's Anthony. He's, he's really good. That guy's
Uh,
creepily good at going from like, "Hi, how you doing?" to like, "I'm going to kill everything."
oh,
Ever. Like,
so after he kills, what's her name?
Stillwell.
Yes, I always forget Madison Stillwell. He kills her
Yep.
after she admits she's scared to death of him, which I mean anybody would be and
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
After that, he makes the shapeshifter person change to her so he still can go back to her and like uh, recreate those moments or still kind of vicariously have that to turn to,
So
even though it's
creepy.
just like a crutch type of a thing.
Yeah.
It's really creepy. And but at first when he goes back to her when they first show her, I mean, were you like, what the fuck?
Yeah. At first I was like, oh crap. I'm like, are we getting into clones? I was
Yeah,
like, oh no. It's like,
exactly. For a second I was like, what the heck? I obviously because they don't show that mimic guy
yeah, doppelganger.
doppelganger for a long time. He's kind of out of your mind. Then all of a sudden, he accidentally changes back and he's like, change that fuck.
Yeah, exactly.
Excuse
Yeah.
my French, but I was like, oh, that makes sense. They got me. They got me. So that was kind of a cool little changer.
Yeah. I'm glad they did kill him though, because when you have somebody like that or Mystique around forever, there's always that feeling
It's
like
annoying.
if a
Yeah.
character is being weird or something strange happens, you'd be like, well, that was actually doppelganger the whole time. And
Yeah.
you're like, oh, come on. Like, so yeah, I'm glad they got rid of him. But yeah, totally. I was like, oh my god, I didn't think she was in this. And then I was like, oh, okay. I was like, this is, oh gosh, we're gonna do more of this. I was like, I thought we were over this weird. Oh nope, this fetish is still going on. But yeah, I like that he does kind of transfer it to Stormfront. And again, I think she's an interesting villain. I think Stillwell might have been a little more um complex in a way than she was. But maybe, like I said, maybe I'm growing to like the backstory a little bit more. It just took me off guard. I was like, oh, so she's like this immortal Nazi who like really knows social media and she's super powered. I was like, huh, okay.
Well, she knew how to use the media to her advantage to work in her favor, right?
Yeah, totally.
Which is just like,
Anybody
you
who, I'm,
yeah, yeah,
well, I
things
shouldn't say
in the
anybody.
real
I've been trying to, and I just don't know how to do it.
yeah, but like things in the real world today, I mean that impact or influence you can have on the public. But this is interesting. But at first, did you think, oh, she's on like she can take a laser shot from freaking
Yeah,
uh,
from Homelander. I was like,
Homelander?
whoa,
Like
okay.
for a second, are you like, wait, like is Homelander really top of the food chain, or?
Sure, yeah, exactly. I was like, okay, maybe she is stronger than him, and I was like,
And for a second, you're like hoping, well, I hope he's still is a tier above, because otherwise, how do you keep them in check? And then I'm like,
exactly.
wait, yeah,
It's a power
yeah,
struggle in your mind. Yeah, that's totally true.
exactly, yeah.
I think okay, well let's wrap up talking about this with the politician who I forget who can like blow people's heads up, which is a very specific power. I was like, okay, interesting. That she's like kind of there and she's kind of just
So
wiping people out, right?
yeah, okay, so this is a big one, and nobody saw it coming, right? That it was going to be her, popping heads like zits, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it's cool, right? They're in that hearing, and all of a sudden, people just start going off like fireworks, and Homelander and Maeve and all of them are in Stormfront. They're just like looking around, like, what the heck? So none of them are privy to it. No one really is, except for the senator who, does it.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing that alludes to her as being guilty of doing this stuff. So this is a question in everybody's mind, like who's blowing up brains, right? Until that final scene. Um, which so she finds out, and this really sets it up for season 3, like, oh, what is happening here, and what's her agenda, and why is she doing this? And she the first person that they reveal her with blowing up ahead is the leader of the church,
Yeah, the collective. Yeah.
the collective, which, because everybody found out that the leak, well, she was on the phone with them and found out the leak came from their archives. So she knows that they have dirt on everybody, particularly the whole Nazi regime deal. So what was the incentive for her to go poof on him? You know, does she have some sort of what's the word, alliance with that, or
Maybe like something where he maybe knew about her, and if it wasn't even her power, it might be like, oh, she doesn't want to be a senator tied to the Church of the Collective because they're the type of
sure?
people who hold this kind of dirt. And then one day he could be like, hey, you know what, like, we have some kind of ideas and motives and we want you to help us further them. And she'd be like, well, I'm not going to. And then he's gonna be like, well, I'm gonna release all the video conferences we've had, together, or the phone calls we've ever done, and we're going to tie
Sure.
you to the church. So maybe
And
that's why she did it.
she also blew up the head of the director of the CIA, or the current
Yes.
one. Why?
Yes.
She was about to help them with leaking the Compound V.
Yes, which, that, by the way, the Compound V leak I thought was going to be a way bigger deal, and like the boys thought it was, but then it didn't really change anything. Like there were some protests, but like
Gotcha.
I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, oh, this is going to be like, we're going to get, and they tried to do like a big, court room session, but then it just obviously it all blew
Blew
up.
up.
Yeah, which I
Um,
don't know if she's in that and you don't see her eyes change, because that was kind of a thing, like her eyes change color when she blows people's heads up, and I was like, well, wouldn't we
oh,
have
really?
seen that in that moment in the courtroom
Well,
scene? I don't
you
know.
know what I initially thought? I initially thought it was the girl from the penitentiary, or the insane
Okay,
asylum.
I'll
I thought it was her going, you know.
more people thought that. Yes, you're not the only one to
Yeah,
think that. I thought it was because like she could like go out and she would put up her hand and she would like crush or explode your whole body, like, or the top half of your
exactly, like,
body.
yeah, just, like, vaporize you, and I
Yeah.
really wanna know why they spent the time to show her hitchhiking and,
Yes.
escaping,
Was that
and
like a
for a
red
second, I
herring?
was like, "That's how this thing is gonna end."
Yeah.
She's gonna be the one to blow up the 7 just because she wants to, and just, like, kinda end it all, the end all be all, because, yeah, the 7 are invulnerable, but, I mean, they could be vaporized, right, by
Maybe?
another soup?
I don't know. Yeah, I was say maybe that
Or,
was,
like Senator, can't she pop the head of Homelander and
you'd
stuff?
think,
Like,
yeah. I wonder if it was a red herring. It was, or it's like thrown out there just to like throw people off too. Or maybe they're going to be related somehow. Like there'll be something that'll be like their cousins or
maybe,
sisters or whatever else. But yeah,
yeah,
they talk about, apparently the creative or director behind the show. He was saying like, when we're trying to figure out which soup in like the first 2 episodes, who can do this, and we cut right to the senator talking right after that. And he's like, that was really intentional. But at the time, you're just like, oh, it's just a senator who's kind of like against the whole superpower thing. So, but
yeah.
she could be cool. I think she could be very interesting. I
Oh,
just
yeah,
think
yeah,
that
major,
power, we got
yeah,
to know how that thing works, right? A little bit, because it's like, well, is she ever in a bad situation? Because like you can't kidnap her, because if you do, she'll just wake up and she'll blow your head up, like, or something to that extent.
yeah.
Like and also now that Huey just kind of, I feel like between Huey just joining her cause at the end of season 2, it's almost as weird or out of place as him just sitting on some random park bench next to Starlight in season 1. It's like these really
Yeah,
weird circumstances. You're like, what? First off,
your
who sits?
destiny.
Yeah, who sits on a park bench next to somebody else like that? Like, if you did that even before the
That's true
pandemic, people
too,
would be
yeah,
like, "What are you like?" Be
yeah,
like, "There's other
buzz
benches."
off.
Like, and she's having like this like emotional phone call with her mom at the time, and he's just like sitting there eating a sandwich. I'm like,
Totally.
Huey, you're killing me. Anyway, yeah, I think that's kind of like Huey's kind of a through line of just like, and watch, he'll have a superpower that's like destiny or something. I don't know. But anyway, it sounds like I'm bragging on the show. I'm not. I really like the show. I watched it, like the first season a few times now. I might even watch season 2 a few times as well. The joke I was making about before earlier, Joe, is like that guy who's got like regenerative powers, and they spend like 5 minutes on like, what if like these guys existed and you could pay to take them into a motel room and cut off their arms and stuff. I was like, I get it. I'm like, but like, why? Like, I get it. Like they're trying to be like the world would be so weird. Superheroes are real. I'm like, I get that. I understand.
Yeah, yeah.
But you kind of already done. I don't know. Anyway, I like the show a lot. I think there's some really good acting. I think there's some good use of their budget. Do what they can with it. They make it compelling enough. And as you've said, Joe, I think I've warmed up to especially more of the boys. You're supposed to like the boys, I think, to a certain degree, right? It's called the boys. It's the show. But also, I like the director lady who's like was like Butcher's handler back in the day, and she kind of is back in the fold. I think she's really good. She's also on the blacklist now, or was last season. I don't know where she's now, but I like her a lot. I'm like, oh, she's cool. She has a commanding presence that I like.
Sure.
But yeah, I watch for Billy Butcher and to watch and see what Homelander is going to do next, and I hope that Huey, just don't screw this up with Starlight, because at least at the end of this season, he's like, oh, I'm making some big changes in my life. He's like, I'm going to cling on to you. I'm like, thank God. Because I thought he was going to break up with her right there. I was like, Huey, I was like, you were just killing me. I was like, I can't even watch, man. It's just like when he's on screen, I'm like, I'm uncomfortable. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm like, or like, God, he's sitting with Lamplighter and they're watching movies together. So like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so I would recommend checking it out. Again, you have to be a bit older and have an Amazon Prime account, but I'd recommend checking out if you have the means to do so and are of the age and also are okay with violence and some other stuff. So anyway, Joe, any other final thoughts on The Boys season 1 and 2?
I mean, we covered it all front to back. I think, yeah, as you said, if you have a taste for that sort of thing, you can handle a little bit of gore, and you like something of the superhero genre that's a little bit more of a realistic take on how it could potentially be if things went a little wrong or a little different. Um, and you like maybe that more mature style, this is for you.
Yeah.
It's a little twisted.
Mm.
And I don't mean that Marvel and DC isn't mature. It's, for kids. I
Yeah.
don't mean it that way at all. I mean that this is more of a
This is an R rating, and the other ones are
yeah.
PG-13. More.
Well, exactly, but it's also a little bit more. You got to use your thinker a little bit.
Yeah.
There's a lot of dialogue, things like
Mhm.
that. It's not. It's not as formulaic, and it's like all these new hit shows these days, or even kind of Game of Thrones, like where things will pop up and surprise you, or you never would have thought for a second that he was just going to outright kill her with like no second thought to it.
Sure. Yeah.
So they're constantly playing a trick on you, and like, oh, I almost fell off the edge of my seat again. Damn it, boys, you got me.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of that. So if that speaks to you and you kind of like that style, go for it. And if you find or like to relish in the through line to our modern day society and kind of the reflection of that, or the
for sure.
correlation, and you enjoy that kind of humor or whatnot, it's for you. So yeah, final thoughts. Check it out if you are of age.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And Vought, you suck. All right, you suck, Vought. You just the worst. I don't care. Your heritage is horrible. You guys are a bunch of bad people. I saw people commenting on. They did like a death battle, and they were putting all of them like the 7 against each other, more or less, without Homelander, because Homelander's so overpowered. And I saw people commenting, they're like, "Oh yeah, and Vought sucks." Like, just like they're like, "We just hate this fictional corporation with so much vigor." I'm like, yeah, I totally get it. I'm interested to see if in season 3 they do the like inject the boys with a little bit of compound V or take a pill that gives them like superpowers for like 15 minutes. I think that's what it's like in the show. I thought so too. I was like, oh, Huey's gonna get one of these and he's just gonna be like, so
Yeah.
I really wanted that to happen. Oh man, that's what I hope.
I needed to set the record straight too, because I know in past podcasts or and whatnot, we've had the conversation of what I would be like if I were Superman. I would not be a Homelander, okay?
That's good.
Maybe one of the veins in there I would find my lane in the highway, but no, I'm not gonna I'm not just going to smear a crowd of people with my laser eyes. I'm not going to develop some sort of weird mother Oedipus complex. Um,
It's good. It's
and I,
good.
I I wouldn't be humble. I know that, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't be as self indulgent as he is, or self obsessed or vain. But I'd be if he's here, I'm somewhere down in here.
Sure.
Um, you would live in fear of me,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't be up here.
That's good. 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 You've set the record straight. Now everybody can
I
sleep
had
well tonight, just in case Joe ever does get
exactly.
superpowers. We can all sleep well because I think
I
he
do have a
might come for
line
me
on
first.
a guy from Sandusky, Ohio contacted me. He was talking about something called Compound Z.
Come on, see,
Um,
it's a
and I
different
was going
thing.
to give it a shot.
He's like, "You want to talk to fish, buddy?" No. Yeah. Anyway, that's great. That's good, Joe. I'm proud of you. Thank you for coming out here and saying that. That's good. That's good for all of our viewers. They're gonna be like, "What's happening?" Anyway, we're gonna move to the next segment of the show, where we like to kill time, or as we like to call it,
Time killers.
that's very good. Time dot killers. It's good. Joe, what have you been killing time with? What have you been watching? What you been playing? What's going on with you?
Uh, well, so The Boys
Yep.
finished that up a couple weeks
Oh,
ago.
what do you think of it?
Uh,
Got him.
well, let me tell you, Jimmy. So let's
Okay.
start at season one. So
You're like, his name is Huey, and he has a girlfriend named Robin, but it didn't last. And Simon Pegg is in it, and I like him.
you could say that relationship vaporized.
Uh,
uh, no, so finish that up right after the final episode was released. Kind of binged it over a few weekends. Um, what else have I been watching, if anything? Having gotten access to Amazon Prime through my sister who has an account, I've been, checking out a few things here and there. There's some really obscure stuff on Amazon Prime,
mm-hmm,
like the most obscure,
mm-hmm.
uh, like even home video type stuff,
Oh,
obscure.
weird.
Like not quite, but kind of like poorly done, like really bad quality, like the worst of the worst on Netflix.
Okay.
Um, But like I've stumbled upon some things like there's something called, I think it's Missing 411, where this guy's written all these books and done all this research on these instances where like hunters go missing or campers go missing, and they're always related to certain conditions, and he'll investigate them and he maps them out and he finds these hot spots of where these things occur. um, so for instance, like a couple of the prerequisites for him to even turn an eye towards it are there had to have been a bad weather event and or near water, um, and so on and so forth. There's a
Okay.
bunch of like criteria, and then he logs it. And one example is these hunters go into the woods and they're setting up a drive deer hunting somewhere in Pennsylvania, and the older gentleman, of father in the group or whatever, four of the older guys go in and sit down on stumps, and then the younger generation is on the other fire lane road and they drive towards them to try and drive the deer up towards them. And when they're all done, it's starting to get dark. They all meet up at the truck except for the one guy, and they go in looking for him. Never found him. They set up search grids, parties. They
Oh
searched for
yeah.
like months, and dogs, everything. Never found a trace of him. Not a shoe, not a backpack, not an article of clothing, no garbage or candy bar wrappers, nothing. Just vanished.
Hmm.
Other instances, they do find the bodies. In a lot of the instances, they never find evidence of them, and it's just really weird stuff. And then some of them get a little kind of sci-fi, like some people live to tell a report. Um, and it was just really interesting. I couldn't believe it seemed silly at first, but then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, like it really had like some depth to it, and it was well done.
Sure.
And I think it's called Missing 411 or something like that. And it's kind of spooky. But so like stuff like that, that was one thing I was watching. Um, as far as games are concerned, as of late, I've been really into um, COD as usual. And for any that like the FPS and like COD, they just released a Halloween event. And I gotta admit, like, they did a good job. Like, it's really cool. They released a zombie mode.
Mm.
They turned the map to nighttime, and you're fighting people, but as they die, they turn into zombies and they can come back and kill you, or they can collect these vials that dead people drop to respawn.
Mm.
And it's typical BR, but like the zombies are like scary and they're really fast.
Mm.
And like they have a super jump, so they can jump like hundreds of feet. And and they have gas grenades and stuff like that that they're equipped with. It's really cool, really well done, and at night it's really neat to be in the map at night, and changes the dynamic a lot in the way you approach the game.
Mm.
Um, what was the other thing with it? Oh, so they have a couple other where they inject the nighttime feature. There's like a BR trios with that, and they added this trick or treat aspect to it, where you find these little Easter eggs throughout the map in different areas, and if you collect them all, you unlock treats
Mm.
like skins or new weapons, that sort of thing, which is really cool. So there's like 20 of them, and you have to go through the map and basically trick or treat and open crates to try and find it while still fighting people. So yeah, they put a lot of effort into it. It's really cool. You go to certain areas of the map, and like there's a stadium, and like there's ghosts that hover around. And then when you get too close, they disappear. But then they just randomly pop up, and they're just kind of wondering about the map. Um, it's just super neat. They put a lot of effort into it, and it's cool. I did try out the new beta for Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. I feel like it's fine, but in my opinion, compared to Modern Warfare and Warzone, I feel like it's regressing. I think it's taking a step back, in my opinion,
Okay.
uh, mechanic wise, as well as time period. You know, you're going back to the 80s. Some of the equipment is a little lackluster. The guns look a little whatever. And I'm kind of like, I haven't pre ordered it or anything. I don't think I'll need to buy it because it's going to integrate with Warzone somehow, because
Mm.
they're going to continue Warzone is free to play. But somehow those weapons and skins are going to integrate with it, and the map's going to change, something like that.
Hmm.
So I don't know. But I played the multiplayer, and just overall, it felt like a dud to me. I felt like I stepped up to this Modern Warfare with the new mechanics, the new weaponry, and it's all, you know, current day time period setting. And then now they're taking it a full 40 years in the past, and yeah, and then if they change the mechanics of Warzone, it's like, why? This is worse. I don't like it. Not all people feel that way, but I just felt like it's clunky and it's not as fluid and realistic as this current rendition. So, real interested to see how that'll play out. I know um, I don't think a lot of our listeners or demographic is too into the FPS Call of Duty genre, but nonetheless, my side of it felt like I needed to report on it for
There you go.
anybody that might
Yeah.
hear. So yeah, but that's been it. I love the whole spooky season that they've injected. It's a lot of fun. So um, yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I think that does it, Jimmy.
Cool.
I
Fair
think
enough.
that does it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. That means it's my turn. And guess what? I've been shooting.
Wait, no, no.
Oh my goodness.
I gotta kill a little bit more time before Jimmy gets into it. Actually, in all seriousness, and more just us conversing, something that I thought we should check out,
Hmm.
meaning all of us, me, you, Drew, Haley, whoever would be interested. There's a game called Rogue Company. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Rogue Company.
Rogue Company.
I'll look it up.
I've watched some people play it. 100 Thieves, the gaming group out in California. Nade Shot, prior previous Call of Duty champion pro player. He's the CEO or owner of that company,
Hmm.
and him and a lot of his 100 Thieves creators who work under the umbrella of 100 Thieves, they all got together in a party in teams of I think 5 or something like that, and they went against each other.
Hmm.
And it's really cool. It's kind of like multiplayer maps, and it's kind of like search and destroy, plant a bomb, and then kill each other kind of a thing. It looks really cool and competitive. You get a close group together to play that. It looks like a lot of fun, and I think it's free to play.
It
I'm
says
not
that it
sure.
is. It's like a third person free to play game.
Yeah, yeah, but it looks like something maybe you could get into for sure. I would have thought just by looking at it and the style of the game and the way it works and all that. Not a BR, obviously, and I don't know, looked kind of compelling to me. I kind of liked it, and
Okay.
for a third person shooter, I thought it looked good too.
So you're gonna download it and you're gonna tell me all about it, and then if it's good, then I'll hop in. Right.
Sure, I guess it is free to play. So one night maybe we could just both hop in and see what we think.
Oh gosh, get yelled at by you again. I'll be like, I just ran over here and I did a thing. Oh, which by the way, what I was gonna say before, because I had such a great segue, and I thought you were gonna bring it up as a joke to me. When it goes into like when it goes live, I really think it's a game you'll like. But I've been playing a bit of Second Extinction because I've been shooting dinosaurs in the face. Man, it's so much fun, Joe. You'd really like it. It's got those Evolve vibes a little bit, and I mean that in the best way.
Oh,
I made a little video on it, but man, I really enjoy playing that game. Like it's just fun. But yeah, I'll check out this Rogue Company too if you wanna throw
oh,
down. You just let me know. You just let me
that
know.
one for sure I want to check out. And I've also been a little curious about Among Us.
Yes, which
I
we
mean,
should. Yeah, we should like the only way we could do that. I'm not sure if it's. I don't know if you would have it's like a phone game too. I'd rather play it if it's like you and Haley and Drew and myself and Levi. Like you want to have a lot of people to be
yeah, like an
playing.
actual group that knows
Yeah,
each other.
yeah,
It's a lot
yeah,
more
yeah.
fun than
Because
you
they
know
like
chat,
Levi.
right?
A little secret. Levi keeps trying to get me to play with his friends, and I'm like, I'm not gonna do that because I don't want to
Now,
like
is that what
buy
they're
a bunch of
playing
people.
Among Us?
Yeah, he'll play. Well, he plays World of Warcraft, and then they'll play Among Us afterwards, and I'm like, both games that go nowhere. Because
Yeah,
like Among
well,
Us, I play for a bit, and then I'd be like, that was fun, but I'd rather play
but
with people.
Among Us, it kind of seems like one of those games where it's fun to like hang out and like do
Sure,
the
like
thing, but
Fall
then it turns
Guys.
into yeah, and then it turns into like this massive debate and like and you get some laughs out of it. I think it would be fun, like a leisure sit back and just kind of play it, and,
Sure.
you know. So I don't know. I don't know. I know it's on PC. I don't know, and I know it's on mobile. I assume the PC is obviously better for
Maybe.
somehow, some way. But
Sure.
and I don't know if you would need like a supercomputer to play something as simple as that.
I don't
I
think
would think
so.
anything would do. So
No.
I could probably work it up. But something I was kind of open to trying sometime, like some night, we all hop on and try it out for funsies.
Sure.
But yeah, all right. So that's my 2 cents. I had those 2 that I had to talk about
That's
and
good.
just get out there and maybe we try them out sometime.
Good. Last thing I'll mention here is I've been watching Harley Quinn, which is an animated show on HBO Max. If you like The Boys, you'll probably like Harley Quinn because it's a little more obviously cartoony, and it's not as gruesome as The Boys can be, but it's definitely violent. There's lots of swearing, and the actress who plays Penny on The Big Bang Theory actually does the voice for Harley Quinn, and
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
she does a great job, I think, making it her own, and she doesn't go full on like the full on Harley Quinn voice, which I like as well. But if you had that for an entire show, it would get grating. That kind of
Mr. J.
Mr. J Puddin'. I'd be like, she has a little bit of that. Like sometimes they'll take a word, like if she were to say like I'm gonna go camping, they would change it and put instead of the G it'd be an apostrophe. She'd be like I'm gonna go camping. Like that. It's like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And she does a really good job. Everybody on that show does. And honestly, my favorite character is Bane. He has this like they make him it's like a big joke. Like the show is supposed to be really jokey, but the big joke is that he's kind of like Bane from The Dark Knight. And he just like the stuff he says is so good, and he's like talking to like the penguin's like son or something at one moment, and he talks about like how you have to control your emotions, and he like turns and he like trips over a chair, and he just like loses it, and he like picks up the chair and he just throws it out the window, and he's like, I'm gonna drown this chair, like he's just like going off, or like he'll like there'll be sees like a shadow of something. Two-Face is trying to do this branding thing where Two-Face and Bane are going to team up, and the branding's going to be called Two Faces. And it's Two-Face, like a picture of Two-Face, like a profile shot, and like a shadow. And Two-Face is trying to get Bane to buy into this, like, it's us together. And Bane's like, well, I know the shadow. I was born in it. Like, stuff like that. It's like
so
little
this
stuff.
is like, it's animated and it's like an adult humor, adult comedy
It's
type of
like
thing?
if Rick and Morty were like a superhero show. Like, it kind of to that kind of humor, but it's
called Harley Quinn.
It's called just Harley Quinn.
And it's on what?
It's on HBO Max. It might be like DC Universe. It's like weirdly like you gotta have to find it, but it's oddly very entertaining. And if you don't know a lot about Batman, like some like minor villains, they get really into some like super niche stuff that I haven't even heard. I've heard of a few of them, but the comedy is usually pretty good. But like I said, I just love Bane because they make so much fun of Bane. And yeah, he's great. But everybody's great. There's Batman. He's in this one too. I just watched an episode where it was like a meta episode where there's these two guys watching it like in the real world, and one of them has a shirt that says like The Last Jedi isn't canon, and the other guy's got another shirt that's like kind of like they're like super fans but also kind of hate this type of thing. I don't know, it was like it was a commentary, on
mind
fandom.
you, Kaylee Cuoco is a good choice for the voice of Harley Quinn.
That's how you say her name, Kaylee Cuoco. Yeah, she's, again, I thought she doesn't have to try as hard as she does in the show, but she does put a lot of work in, and I appreciate it a lot. She does a good job to not be annoying, and Harley Quinn's definitely changed over time. But also, Alan Tudyk, who you guys might know as Steve the Pirate from Dodgeball, he's done a ton of voice work. He is incredible. He plays both Joker and Clayface in this show. That guy is, and he was in Firefly and that other show. Oh yeah, that was Firefly. Anyway, Alan Tudyk, he's super duper good. Also, some of my Frasier fans might know him as he was the brief owner of KACL, and he ends up making his apartment look just like Frasier's. The guy is incredibly talented. One of my favorite things I've seen him do, he got to do the voice of Hey Hey, which is like the chicken in Moana, which is a chicken, and like it just made chicken noises. And I was like, this is kind of like, it seems like weird to do that. Like, why would you get somebody for that? But I watched a little behind the scenes thing, and he's doing like these chicken noises and all this stuff. And he like looks at the camera and he's like, I went to Juilliard and now I'm doing this. Like he's that type of guy he can make fun of himself. And I appreciate it. Good on you, Alan. You seem like a good guy. Anyway, there you go. That's what we've been killing time with, the Time Killer segment. Let's wrap up quickly with a brief stop by the old community feedback and questions. Shall we, Joe?
We shall. Let's do it.
This one comes in from at Ryan Layman 3 over on the Twitters. I asked our Twitter followers what they thought of like The Boys and like seasons 1 and 2. He said, I've only watched the first season right now. I really enjoyed it, but the ending of the season was a bit predictable, though it was satisfying. Well, really? Huh. I like to. He said
was it was predictable?
The ending of season 1.
Oh, season 1? Yeah, I saw it coming. I think him killing her.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, cool. And then now this question, we just got a question that came in too. Joe, I think you're gonna like this one. This one comes in from Zora Caviar. He says, why is Karl Urban so cool, and why hasn't he been cast as Judge Dredd in Cyberpunk 2077 yet? A great question. I think that would be a hilarious little Easter egg, and maybe it's a copyright issue. But if they could just put someone in like a judge setting and it's Karl Urban, I'd be cool. Or like a helmet that looks kind of like that, and he's like judging people. I don't know, man. Underrated movie. I don't know. Joe, would that be too much for you? Would you be cool with like a Judge Dreddish cameo in Cyberpunk?
Sure, fine. I guess. I don't. I mean, a Judge Dredd cameo in Cyberpunk?
Yeah, if it starts there, where does it end? You get Blade Runner in there. I mean,
I
Harrison
mean,
Ford
I
as
guess,
Blade
yeah.
Runner. You know,
Unnecessary, I guess. I don't really need that in that game, I
I
guess.
would love it if you get Keanu Reeves and Carl Urban in the same shot together, Joe. I would be so happy. I'd be
I
so
don't mind him
ecstatic.
in the game. I don't know if you need to actually take like a well-known character and
Sure.
like inject them into the game per se. I'd rather it be original.
Sure. I think Zora's joking a little bit there. He's a little bit of a
No, no,
jokester.
I know,
He's
but
a
I mean, I
jokester.
get how you get that vibe out of Carl Urban for sure.
Oh gosh, Carl. I mean, I still wish he could have been. I think Robert Pattinson's going to do a good job, but I still kind of wish he would have been Bruce Wayne. I think he could have pulled it off. I think he could be suave what he wants to be.
Yeah,
I think he's such a good actor. I think he's really
true.
good. Anyway, yeah, there you go. That's the show for this week. If you guys made it all the way to the end, our hashtag this week is going to be Da Boys. That's DABOYZ. Just so everybody knows, so you can tweet that at us
Go
along with
boys.
Da Boys, along with the hashtag Critical Podcast. You can tweet it at our official account. If you want to send in a question or a thought or a feeling about the show or an idea for an upcoming show, we would love to hear you. But you can tweet at Go Critical, or you can tweet at me personally. I'm at JimmyGood013. However, if you'd like to tweet something to Mr. Lever, Joe, where can they find you?
Lever underscore 627. That's Lever just like Beaver, only with an L.
Excelente, muy caliente. I just came up with that, and I think I was like working out in my head as I said it. I'm like, this should rhyme.
Sure. You've been practicing that all night.
I was like sitting in the mirror. I'm like, excelente, muy caliente. Okay, we can do this. Anyway, yes. So do that hashtag. Let us know if we got to the end. And again, if you are listening to this on like an audio, we are on Spotify, we're on iTunes, we're on Google Podcasts. Please let us know. Leave a review. I will check into that to make sure that's all firing on all cylinders. But please let us know, because hello to our audio listeners, but also hi to all those video listeners too. We appreciate you guys so dang much. I stream on Twitch. We have an Instagram. We have a TikTok. We are so hip. Joe, we're the hippest you've ever seen. The hippest cats in creation, just like Cusco. But if you want to support us monetarily, consider checking out our Patreon. And thank you to all of our patrons, especially the ones who are at the $5 and up tier, who you can see their names popping up on the screen. So thank you guys so much. Joe, it was a pleasure to have you back. Thank you for being on to talk about the boys.
My pleasure, Jimmy. It was a beaut of a podcast.
This is a bit of a beaut. This is a bit of a beaut, exactly. And thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you so dang much. Please go check out all those other shows and share us around. That would be great. Until next time, everybody, just remember to adapt and overcome.
And we'll see you next time.
Perfect. We'll add that at the end.